Hey everybody, just a little heads up, viewer discretion is advised for this upcoming episode. The following content may contain suicide or self-harm topics. Okay, so welcome to another great episode of Wesam's World. This is the 289th episode. This isn't our second time doing this because someone forgot to hit the record button at all. This intro is not going to be as good as the first one I did. I'm losing it. I'm losing it already. It's going down the drain. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We have a very special guest, a return guest from over 4 years ago coming on the show today. We're going to introduce her here in a little bit. If you're listening live on Adobe Radio, thank you so much. We always appreciate our live listeners. Tweet at us, Instagram message us. Our producers will respond back. Maybe even me. Maybe not. Who knows? Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the bell icon, subscribe, comment below. It just helps with the algorithm and gets us up there so we get more views, more awesome guests, and more content for you all. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, hit the subscribe button there as well. And I believe on Spotify now, they might start allowing people to like little thumbs up or hearts there. So look out for that. All that out of the way, our friend, before we introduce our guest, I'm going to introduce our guest today. Right now. Today, right now. Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Sarah Gilman, amazing actress, return guest from over 4 years ago. If that name sounds familiar, we both worked on an episode of Disney's I Didn't Do It Together.
The cult classic.
Cult classic.
Yep.
Underground cult classic.
Yep. No, one of the channel's best.
One of the channel's best.
Most well known, right after Hannah Montana.
Right. No, you know what? I think you guys beat it.
In certain populations, absolutely.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Certain populations.
I feel like some demographics really like this.
It is so nice to see you again.
It's so nice to see. It's weird time. I feel like we're different people. I know it's like what? It's like takes like 7 years for like cells to completely turn over.
Yeah.
And become a physically different person. But I feel like, we saw each other like right before the pandemic.
Yeah. I just literally looked at our texts, and the last time we text was in February 2020. And you were on the show that it aired in January of 2020. And that's pre-COVID. That's a totally different person.
It's I love the idea of like our last text being like, this is crazy, have you heard of this COVID thing? And just like absolutely nothing for 4 years until, hey Sarah, what did you
I gotta ask you something though, just for logistics clarification. In my text messages, it didn't show that I had invited you back on. Did I email you?
No, I think it was Instagram.
It was Instagram that I invited you back on. Okay, that clarifies it.
Yeah.
Because I got a lovely surprise text message from you for our listeners and viewers that's saying, hey, I'm a little bit behind on my messages. And I'm like, when did I send out this invite?
I love the idea of just sending an invite like blacked out. Like, we never know who's going to get on the show. I don't know. Who do we reach out to? I don't know.
So are you just the type of person, and I've got to know, because I think this is important for everybody to realize. Some people, it's not like a malicious thing, or it's not like they're trying to be rude, where they'll see a text message and be like, oh, I have to respond back to that person. And then they'll get busy and just forget about it, and then they get inundated with all other messages, and so it gets put on the back burner, or they forget. Or what was it? Like, do you like have a list of people that you need to respond back to?
Yeah, it was depression. So what had happened was, we're going to dig in.
Okay.
So what had happened, well, generally I find it like, when I respond to a text or like an Instagram message or anything, I really want it to be like well thought through. Mm-hmm. And so I have a tendency to not want to do it unless I feel like I can commit to having a conversation right then and there if they respond. And which is like a dangerous kind of like level of activation energy that you need, because that's a lot. And so then what happens is I see it, I clock that I need to respond to it, and then I don't respond to it, but I think about it every hour, every day until I respond. And then on top of that, I started getting the anxiety of like, oh, they probably hate me because I haven't gotten back to them yet. It's just not, it's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because we love mental health care. My psychiatrist was like super old and like still uses a pager and wasn't responding to my refill requests. And so I was off my antidepressants for like a month when I got your text, and I was just not in a place to like respond to anything.
Yeah.
But now I'm back on them and it's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're a big mental health advocate, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. First of all, thank you for being so open about that.
Yeah, 100%.
This show is never ever like a gotcha. Like we're here to make you cry.
I'm waiting for
views.
like the Ashton Kutcher like punk to like, we gotcha.
Can I ask you more questions about that?
Absolutely.
So you specifically went to a psychiatrist, or okay? And do you have a therapist as well, or is it just the psychiatrist?
Yeah, I do have a therapist. The psychiatrist is the only one who can actually prescribe medications.
Okay.
So therapists usually can only engage in like talk therapy, or they can't give you actual pills.
Yeah.
Which is good. Not everybody should be able to hand out pills without training.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And part of this like depression that you're feeling, was it because of work, or is it like deals with like identity and stuff? Because I feel let me take a couple steps back here. I don't think being an actor / artist in Los Angeles or a big city is an easy thing at all. In fact, it's actually the opposite. I feel like for a lot of people, it can be detrimental, especially the business aspect of what acting is and how it's just filled with constant obstacles, rejection, and things out of your control. And your self-worth is sometimes tied into whether or not you're booking or being successful or people enjoy you. And then combine that with these things, which I think have harmed artists more than anything, especially their imagination. And then including the social media aspect of it, which I think is just, our brains aren't ready for that on an evolution basis. Is it all of that just compounding with the depression? Is that what it dealt with?
Yeah, it's definitely. So I'll answer your question. I'll take a few steps back too, and I'll probably give like a broad overview answer, and you can dig in wherever you want to. But definitely like all of the above. Like in terms of the acting thing, I think you're I completely agree. It's, we love it. That's why we do it, but it's not easy. And I especially really struggle with like the lack of control. And also one thing I've realized, I mean, we met when I was on Disney Channel, and that was probably when I was like 17 or 18, but I've been doing acting since I was 12 or 13, doing like guest stars and commercials and like short films and stuff. And something I was thinking about, I think it was like Jason Bateman on his podcast that talked about it. It's like, those are your developmental years, right? Like adolescence is now defined as 10 to 25. And like, that's a crazy, tumultuous time in which you're like figuring out who you are and like creating your foundational sense of self. And I spent all of those years trying to be someone else. And because that was my career, right? It was about trying to like game the system and figure out like how to be what I was supposed to be when I auditioned for a character. And so my identity almost became like trying to figure out what my identity was supposed to be in that situation. I mean, you hear a lot about like code switching with different people in different populations where, they tailor the way they speak or their tone or their look to the certain like social situation that they're going into. And I feel like as an actor, you're kind of trained to do that. And I think it was only recently I feel like I didn't know who I was. And my depression, I've struggled with it since I was 12. To kind of like put us into the timeline perspective, right after we met, that year during the pandemic, or not during, I didn't do it, but like when we did the first podcast episode, like that year during the pandemic, I was in my first relationship. And then when it ended, I was very like caught off guard. We're in the middle of like quarantine. We had been living together. It had moved very quickly. I feel like pandemic time was like 1 month was like a year in itself. I don't know if you felt that too. It's just like everything felt longer. I don't know. And so I went into a crazy tailspin after that relationship ended, because as an actor, everything's so amorphous, and he was an engineer, and there was definitely a degree to which I was like, oh, that's a linear career. And like he loves me, I love him. And so like as long as he's there, like I have this like kind of linearity as well. Because like he's a constant, we're gonna be together. And so when that ended, I was caught off guard, I was floating, I was panicking because my one perceived constant no longer existed, and I didn't know who I was. Acting was all closed down because of the pandemic. And so during that time, I'm a survivor of suicide. So that is something that I had struggled with back in college, especially, and not talked about. And post this breakup, I was in a really bad mental space, and I wanted to be off social media. I wanted to just like isolate. I think me being here is a huge testament to like the support that I got at that time from my close friends, like Karin and Sophie, and Nolan. And so I decided like I wanted to get off of social media, and my team was like, please don't do that. Like, we really need you to, stay on Instagram. And I was like, okay, well, what if I just make it private? They're like, maybe not. Maybe we keep it public. And then I was like, okay, well, then it's going to be about mental health resources, because like that's what I need right now. And I was seeing so many people struggling. And so I started like looking in and taking classes on how to talk about these things without triggering. Because I think there's a lot of people with really good intentions, and then they kind of raw dog it. And unfortunately, it can be communicated in a way, you see this a lot in like eating disorder recovery. It can be communicated in a way that's like very triggering to the people it's actually trying to help. Especially with like when it comes to suicide, like people talk about like methodologies, and like you don't want to include details because that can be in itself like triggering. And so I started doing a lot of research on this, and then I started posting about it and sharing my story. And then I started like partnering with different organizations to share their resources, because I'm not a psychologist, and so there's people out there who are specialists and are doing the work. And what I had to bring to that, I think, was a platform and an ability to public speak. And so that kind of started this journey with mental health advocacy that's kind of what I've dug into. It's like, I feel like acting for me pays the rent, and like mental health advocacy pays like the world rent. It's like why I'm here. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's food for the soul. It's a spiritual currency for yourself, maybe.
Yeah.
To some degree.
It was a huge, I just threw a whole wad of information at you.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, because it's a lot of serious things to take in and think about, because first of all, thank you so much for being that open about it. Where did the turn come in to take this really dark side of you and turn it almost like into a strength to like want to help people?
Yeah.
What was that turning point? Because I think that is crucial. That's something that always fascinates me, that fork in the road, and why people choose the left or the right.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's a super valid question. I think there were two for me. In psychology, sometimes these are referred to as like moments of situated choice, right? When you come to almost a crossroads, and the choice that you make will have a larger impact than many other choices you make. So the first one was in college, and I was at USC. The first year I'd been there, I was doing I Didn't Do It. I was acting throughout it. I was kind of having a weird time. I was trying to definitely be someone that I was not, in terms of thinking that's what I needed to be at like USC. It's a party school. It's fun. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be fun. I'm going to go out to parties and, all this kind of stuff. And between like alcohol and my already like pre-existing like mental health struggles, it just all started to kind of like go downhill. And it hit a point where all my friends left, because they were like, we can't keep watching you hurt yourself, and like we love you, but this is too hard, because we love you and you're not helping yourself. And that was like at the end of my college career, and I decided to take the last semester and just like rediscover who I was. So I like kind of isolated myself in a hole, because I knew I was like, I'm either gonna look at this and ask myself some really hard questions and answer them, or I'm gonna die. I have two options here if I keep going down that road. And so I did. I isolated and I did a lot of reading on psychology and neuroscience because for me that helped explain why I was turning to the coping mechanisms I turned to and why I was feeling certain types of way. Like when you read about brain chemicals and neurotransmitters and you discover like the imbalances that lead to mental illness, it's no longer like a moral failing, which is what it was seen for so long because of, you know, the common zeitgeist back in, I don't know, forever. And so and able to like take a step back, that helped me like create a foundational sense of self around that and start looking into, I feel like you can only act intentionally in a system if you understand how that system works. So once I actually started looking at like my coping mechanisms and then trying to figure out like what triggers were leading to them, I was able to design a better environment to avoid those triggers or create alternative coping mechanisms when I knew those triggers were going to be coming. And so that was that point, and that I felt like was really good and led to a lot of growth. When it happened in the pandemic after this breakup, soapbox moment, I think breakups are the most underrated form of loss ever. I think they're so ubiquitous that everyone just counts them as harmless. And everyone goes, like, people go through them, and then you get, like, no sympathy. You're like, okay, yeah. You're like, you know, if you're bummed about it for more than, like, 2 months, then, like, get over it. It's just a breakup. But, like, when you break up with someone, one, they're still alive. So it's, like, relying on, especially with social media now, you watch yourself get erased from their social media. It's, like, this weird thing, and then it becomes a thing of self-control to, like, not check in on them and not text them. And, like, they're still existing. And at the same time that you're mourning the relationship and them, you're also mourning like who you were and your sense of becoming. Like you're mourning the perceived future you had. And it's this huge mourning period, but it's so ubiquitous because breakups are so common that like, I feel like we just don't give them the sympathy they deserve. Anyway, this is all to say, I was in a really bad spot. I didn't know who I was. I wasn't hopeful about my future. I could feel myself like slipping back into, more like suicidal ideation. And
say that again. Suicidal what?
Suicidal ideation. So it's the thinking about suicide. There's like passive suicidal ideation, which is just kind of those thoughts of like, oh, I wish I wasn't here. Like what would it be like if I was dead? And then when it gets into active space is when it's like especially dangerous, and that's when you're actually starting to make plans. And you know, I started thinking about suicide when I was in middle school. I didn't have an attempt until I was in college, but it's almost like a little conditioned part of my brain at this point, right? Like the more you have a thought process, the more you're with a specific person, the deeper that those neural circuits become around that. That's why like seeing your ex can be so dangerous if you had like a really strong relationship, because you see them and those neural circuits get reactivated even if you don't actually, you know, have those feelings, if that makes sense. And so for me, I think I was so ingrained in thinking about suicide and self-harm that it was a knee-jerk reaction when, like, bad things happened that I would just be like, well, what if I just wasn't here anymore? And I was reading a book on suicidology, which is, like, a rather new field of study around suicide. Because it makes no sense, right? Like, your one instinct is survive. And that's what I think what makes self-destructive tendencies like suicide, eating disorders, like self-harm so interesting, because it like as human beings, as little like lizard brain people, like our one instinct is survive. And so like what happens to a brain to make you want to do the opposite? Anyway, that's a different, now I'm going to go on tangents.
That's okay. There's so many questions I have.
I know.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
monologuing. I'll break this up. So the last thing is I was reading something at that time, a book called Suicidal, like Why Humans Kill Themselves. By Jesse Baring. And there was a quote in it that was like, when you can't live for yourself, live for someone else. And at that point, I did not have the faith, the hope in my future, or the positivity to want to live for myself. And I decided this is something I can speak on. I've read a ton about it. I'm learning more every single day. So many people are struggling and kind of talking to or alluding to that struggle during the pandemic, especially young people, which is something I intimately understood. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it as someone with a platform on Instagram. I'm going to talk about it in a healthy way, and I'm going to point the hell out of... I don't know where I was going with that sentence. I was going to point the hell out of I wanted to point to resources.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to share my story to help destigmatize it. And that's what I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do we need to take a quick break, or are we good on?
We do, but it was so good that I just.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. And we are back. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here for me. And please, there's something I want to be considerate of, and that's triggering questions or words or comments. And Peyton, remind me at the end of this, we want to do another. I'd like to do another intro just to talk people like, hey, we're warning, this is going to be a conversation about mental health and suicide, just so that people are prepared for the details of it. And please educate and correct me if I'm going too deep or whatever, because I just don't know your boundaries with it, and then also what's appropriate for the culture in discussing these things. So apologies ahead of time if I cross any boundaries.
I just want to say something really quick in response to that. Like, what a beautiful thing to say. I'm an open book. I'll let you know, but it's just, these are hard conversations to have, and they're more common, I think, than we think, or I would hope that they become more common than they are now. And no one's going to get it perfect the first try. Like, that's okay, right? You don't need to know exactly what to say. I think just knowing from the other person that they want to be there for you, or they want to, talk about it in a helpful way, like, that is the first, like, handshake undergirding of trust that, like, makes it a safe space to have the conversation, not necessarily having all the lingo already, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the first one is pretty heavy then. What is your zodiac sign?
Oh, I'm a Capricorn.
Okay.
And it shows sun and moon. Double down.
This guy, we just had to lighten it up just a little.
Yeah, no.
Just a little bit. It was getting heavy for me, and I was like, all right. Yeah. Throwing a little joke there.
I'm the sea goat.
Okay. Something you said, taking a little bit of a step back, the idea of how breakups are so just so everybody has them and whatnot. I can't express to you how I was heartbroken my first high school breakup. And it wasn't just the breakup. It was going on social media and seeing that she had another date and talking how good it was. I didn't know what to do with myself. I come from a very conservative family. Couldn't talk to my parents about it. And I felt as if my heart was failing. And I remember it was late one night. I was like, I'm going to go for a walk in the neighborhood. My parents were like, what? And I'm like, I'd like to go for a walk by myself in the neighborhood. And they're like, okay, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. And I just left the house and walked. And then I called my best friend at the time, Landon. And he talked me through it. And he helped me just listen, and he was there for me. And I don't know what I would have done, honestly, without him there. I mean, I honestly don't know. I'm not saying I would have gone to suicide or anything like that, but I don't know. It was just I've never experienced that feeling before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I and again, it goes back to my theory on how our brains are not ready on an evolutionary standpoint for social media, for the internet, all this information, all this connectivity all at once. There's some great sides to it, but there's also some terrible, there's terrible aspects to it. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, you can act. Oh, you said something else. You can only act intentionally if you know how the system works. And I think that's a very practical and logical way to approach things, because that's the reality in which we live in. I feel sometimes we create a reality that doesn't exist in our minds because we're like spiraling with negative thoughts constantly. And it's hard for people to stop that spiral.
Yep.
I've noticed.
Yep.
Do you have a tip for people who are in that spiraling phase?
Yeah. 100%. Okay. This is just going to be, there's so much to say,
okay.
Sam.
We have 6 hours.
Oh, okay. I'm ready. Perfect. In terms of the spiraling thoughts, I think there's a few things. One, like, absolutely. I think one of the most important key pieces at the base of it to understand is that reality is just a story we tell ourselves, right? there's something called narrative theory in psychology, which is the sense of like we make meaning of our reality and our perceptions of reality through a story in which usually we're the main character and that we tell ourselves. And a lot of time, because this is just the loop going through your head, you don't question it, right? You just assume that this is reality as it's happening to you instead of like stopping and thinking, because so many times, especially if people tend to have like lower self-esteem or a lower sense of self-efficacy, which is like their belief in their ability to accomplish things, like that's a huge piece of mental well-being, that you believe you can accomplish things or that you're capable. And so a lot of times people with depression or mental illness or just generally having a hard time, maybe you were raised a certain way, like if you have low self-esteem and a low sense of this ability, that like a sense that you can achieve things, then probably the story you're telling yourself is going to be pretty damn negative. And a lot of times I don't think we notice how much speculation we put into those stories. So what I mean is, okay, you see this post from your ex that says she's going out on a date with another person. So the cold hard facts of that is she posted a picture of herself with another person. I don't know the details of the post, but let's just say
it was a Zanga post. It was like a, Zanga.
No.
You remember Zanga?
Nope.
You couldn't post pictures really. It's just like a journal entry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, so disrespectful to laugh at my heartache.
No.
And my heartache.
You can't express
No.
your... No.
Do you
can't,
see
no,
this?
You cannot express your heartache and then go like, I posted it on Zanga. You remember Zanga?
What's Zanga?
This is such a
Exactly.
millennial
Nobody
versus
used
Gen
it.
Z something.
I'm right on the cusp, by the way.
Zanga was like your online diary, and you literally put your thoughts and feelings out in a diary online, and people read it and they commented on it.
That's crazy.
I only know it because of my older sister, because she had a Zanga, and I was like, I want a Zanga. I was like 9 when I made a Zanga, which is not okay.
Oh my gosh, it's so unhinged. That's if anyone had access to my diary.
Oh my god.
Even still nowadays, that's unhinged.
Yeah.
I guess it is
Sorry.
like a little Tumblr core.
Yeah,
A little bit.
right before Tumblr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of turned into
Okay. Okay, that all makes sense. Okay. Trying to think of a way to like put this succinctly. Okay, so pretty much like I'm gonna use Instagram as an analog in this case. Let's just do a fake one. So she posts a picture of her like looking nicer, with another person.
Yeah.
All the facts that you have in that situation are like she is going on a date. Now, based on how you feel about yourself and your like what you bring to a relationship, you might either frame that story for yourself as like, I meant nothing to her, she's moving on so quickly, because I'm a bad boyfriend, I'm not good at, I'm not worth being in a relationship. Or you can frame it in the way of she's really struggling, our relationship meant so much to her, but it wasn't the right thing at the right time, and she's feeling really lonely because she misses me because I brought so much to that dynamic that she's trying to get out there really quickly to distract, right? Those are two very different versions of that story that you're telling yourself. Both of them are stories, by the way. Like the one like through line is like, oh, she's going on a date. Everything else is speculation, right? But based on how you feel about yourself, the speculation that you tell yourself about where you play a part in that is going to either build or like erode your ego, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah. And so one of the ideas of like narrative theory is being more intentional and positive about the story you tell yourself about you.
Intentional and positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think a key part of this, at least for me when I was working on it, is that sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. Because there's a bias that we have, and you see this a lot when it comes to like advertising, that the more you hear something, the more believable it becomes to you. This is huge in like advertising, marketing, and getting people to like change their opinions or like a product. Because the more times you hear like, oh, this is the best paper towels, you're gonna be like, I think that's the best paper towels, even though it's like a silly cognitive bias we have. The point being, like, if the thoughts you're having in your head all the time are like, you suck, you're not lovable, you're not a good boyfriend, whether it's true or not, and that's what you're telling yourself, you're going to start to believe it because you're hearing it so often. So the idea is being like, okay, even if you don't in your heart of hearts believe that she's moving on because she loved you so much and it hurts to move on from you. You got to tell yourself that story, right? The alternative is just putting yourself into a dark hole of you don't matter.
Interesting.
So I mean, and again, this is like a pretty like quick reductive like take on this, but yeah, it's pretty much like we experience our lives in stories. It's how we make meaning of things. And so much of those stories contain speculation that we take as fact. And that speculation is often based on how you see yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So that's one.
So do you mind if I comment on that?
Yeah, please do.
I actually like that, and I feel it can be a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
This is the part I like. There's a great like phrase or saying, like, in order to become a champion, you have to train like a champion. It doesn't happen. Being a champion doesn't happen when you've won the championship. It happens way before that.
Yeah.
So that positive reinforcement thinking, it starts with your thinking and then the application of how does a champion train? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm training like a champion because I am a champion.
Yeah.
And even though you technically aren't a champion yet,
Yeah.
that's what's needed to get to that
Yes.
point. I love that. I feel like there needs to be some sort of positive mentor guidance or therapist, psychiatrist, teacher, somebody
Yeah.
to help you with that. Otherwise, there are some people who might take that like fake it till you make it, be like, oh, she's not with me, she broke up with me because she's fucking crazy,
Yeah.
and she doesn't know anything and I know more than her and I'm the best human being ever. And
Yeah.
you see how now that seems to be a
Yeah.
little bit destructive
Yeah.
now.
100%.
So how do you counteract that?
Yeah.
Other than have a mentor or a guidance of some sort.
Yeah. I think there's a few things. I think having a mentor or guidance, like a therapist helping you through this would be very helpful. And one mode of like psychotherapy that focuses directly on retraining thoughts is called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And so the thing is, again, it's all about assessing the story you're telling yourself, not just choosing like a blanket positive one that reflects well on you and telling that, but figuring out, I'm going to back up. Like you have to figure out what values you're living by, right? One of mine is kindness. Like, as someone who's been suicidal, who's been depressed, I have seen how the smallest acts of kindness, like a smile from a stranger, or like someone asking me how I am, or like a barista giving me a free cup of coffee because they see that I'm struggling, like those things have saved my life on certain days. Like the smallest thing. So for me, like remembering that, like kindness is going to be like one of the most important things that I can try to bring to this world, even in small doses. And so for me, like if I'm telling myself a story, it's possible to tell yourself a story that's not putting yourself down, and you don't need to put other people down to bring yourself up. It's not a zero-sum game, right? Like if I'm good, she must be bad. Maybe you're both good. Maybe you're both imperfect, flawed human beings that are doing the best that they can with really sticky emotional situations. And so the idea being, like, in retelling the story, you have to be intentional about not throwing yourself under the bus, but you also have to be intentional about not throwing other people in the bus. Like everybody is trying to do the best they can in their own, like most people are not trying to be like evil villains in your story. They're trying to be the heroes in their own story. And at times that's going to make you the antagonist in another person's story.
Yep.
But usually I think bitterness and anger, the only people it really affects is yourself, right?
I like that. I like those. I like those tips. And one last thing, you mentioned the aspect of humor. I think at some point, and I love when in a healthy way, and if you're ready for it, applying humor to your trauma, because it I don't want to say it lessens it, because that's not what it's about. I feel like it's reframing it.
Yeah.
You know? I had a restaurant, or my parents had a restaurant, and I worked with my father in the restaurant. We all did. My brothers did, and everything. We laugh about stories that happened and arguments we had in the restaurant, or like moments my dad would yell at us in the restaurant. We laugh now. back then we weren't laughing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I love that evolution of things.
Yeah.
And usually whenever I'm laughing, like for instance, I've got a story to share with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say it, and they probably will see this, or they might not. And either way, it's fine. I have no ill will towards the individual when it happened or afterwards. But anyway, I had 2 commercial auditions in the same, like literally in the same office area, and they had like a bunch of them going on at the same time, like for different companies or whatever. Doing one audition, and then in the middle of it, somebody walks in, and they're like, "Oh," and the casting director's like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "We're in here," and it's like, I'm so sorry," very apologetic, right? Mm-hmm. And then he leaves, and it's a little awkward, and I'm like, "Whatever, it's fine, it happens." And I'm going to my next audition, and I go to the room, and guess who's running it? The guy who walked into mine.
Yeah.
And he's super apologetic. And, like, I see it in his face. Like, I am so sorry. And I'm smiling internally, not because I'm a psychopath, but I know how uncomfortable he feels.
Yeah.
And there's something about that's so visceral to me. That's like, I know what he's feeling, and it makes me happy because I don't know, not happy. I don't know. I'm entertained, or you guys are. What's up? Yeah, I sound like a psychopath right now.
A little bit.
You have made it abundantly clear on this show. You get all warm and fuzzy inside when other people are in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
necessarily like in pain or like
Yes.
something bad's gonna happen to them, but like they're in kind of like a weird anxiety-inducing situation. You're just kind of like, yeah,
Here's
that's
why.
reality.
Yeah,
The
because
human awkwardness.
yeah, I love to see the human spirit, how it reclaims that moment.
Oh.
Because he reclaimed that moment by making jokes while I was in there with the same casting director
Yeah.
who stopped, and I could see him like trying to like, he's okay. He fell off the horse and he's back on.
Yeah.
You know, I love seeing that because it's real.
Okay,
There's
that's fair.
there's no bullshit associated. You're like, he's a psychopath.
No, it's just when I see people like trip or fall or like mess up or something like that, I get like the visceral like mirrored reaction of like, oh no, they probably think I'm judging them, and so I get like secondhand embarrassment because I want to like communicate with my eyes that like it's fine, you're fine, I'm not judging you, and then at the same time I'm like, but I can't look at them because then they'll think I'm paying too much attention and that I feel bad for ignoring them, and it's a whole thing. But I think what you're saying,
We are the opposite.
yes, but I like yours. Yours is kind of a joyful take if you take it in the sense of like, my favorite part is obviously not watching someone like F up. It's watching them like come back from that, like the comeback story. Everyone loves a comeback story. Everyone loves a comeback story.
It's more so for that. And
Okay, but there's a little part of the other part too.
because I've been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And I know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And yesterday, I teach acting. Had a student. This has happened to her a couple times. Just forgets the lines.
Yeah.
And been harping in the class. God, I don't know your lines. So she came in. I was like, you want to go first today? Because usually she goes last. She's like, no, I want to go second. I'm like, great. Let you go second. Scene. She's doing the scene. Starts off okay. She starts forgetting her lines in it. I have an opportunity to stop the scene, but I don't want to do that. I want her to feel what she's feeling, and I want her to reclaim her moment and like get back on the horse and see how that feels. To realize like, yeah, it sucks, but I was able to get back into it.
Yeah.
And she did. And I think that's so much more beneficial. And yeah, it's uncomfortable for everybody. I mean, she
Yeah.
was almost in tears and everything like that. But I feel like that's good because now there's this strength moment that she was able to like get back into the scene. We worked on it a little bit more and she was able to get through it entirely. And so I'm like, that's a win.
That's absolutely a win. I think like you're hitting the nail on the head of something like, super important that we're not taught ever, which is you grow by failure. You learn very little from success. If she'd gone through that scene perfectly, she might have gotten like some, tweaks on her acting or, some questions of like, what if you did it this way instead? But those aren't lessons you're going to remember. Like our brains are prediction machines. We know when we've messed up, we're going to do everything in our power the next time to not mess up. Like that's the lesson you're going to remember. And nobody talks about it. Like you learn from failure. We're taught like you need to be perfect, like just try and avoid failure at all costs. No, fuck that. Go fail. Go fail and learn something and be uncomfortable. No one talks about how like recovery. Like you'd think like recovering from an eating disorder, recovering from like self-harm would be like super fun and roses because like look, you're not hurting yourself anymore. Lies. It's uncomfortable. Like recovery is uncomfortable, and that's not because it's bad. It's because it's different. It's new. Like you're experiencing something for the first time and you're flailing, or you're like rejecting a previous, thing that you used to fall back on. That's going to be uncomfortable. But
that's life too.
Yeah.
I love seeing those moments.
Yeah.
Because that's it. That's real.
Yeah.
There's no bullshit. Especially when people are panicked a little bit, there's a nice little thing that I see in people's faces that's different.
Yeah.
And why I know that sounds really psychopathic too.
no, you're alive. It's happening.
Right. But again, it's the reclaiming moment of that. It's the survival moment. It's going back to reclaiming, like getting back on the horse, reclaiming. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. And we're right back. Okay. Big bummer. CSI Las Vegas.
Oh yeah,
canceled.
really quickly. Yeah, CSI Las Vegas was canceled.
Yeah.
I want to talk about failure. Really, there's just like two quotes that I love, and we can tie this into CSI
Please,
too. There you go,
please.
failure.
Please.
But there are two like failure quotes I love. Are like one is like the only person who remembers your failures are you. So true. And the other one is if you haven't failed, you're not trying hard enough.
I love that.
Boom. Okay. Now we
good.
can talk about CSI getting canceled. Great segue.
You know what? You should just do Instagram posts. Hey, here's a failure quote for you. Boom.
Boom.
Boom. I love it. Apologies. That sucks. That's show business, as you said earlier.
Yep, that's so Hollywood, baby.
It's so Hollywood, baby. I wish we had our intern here, who you've missed. He's a great guy. He recently he was in the hospital. He got his arm amputated. His name is Zeke Duhan, and he's doing better though. He's in Oklahoma.
That's
yeah,
good.
Yeah, he's doing a lot better. But yeah, he would do this character, and he would be like, "Hey, like that show business, baby." He played like some kind of manager and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
I have so many questions, but I don't think they're
please, go ahead.
appropriate.
No,
I don't
please.
think it, I just
No,
wanna-
about his arm being amputated.
Yeah.
Please ask away.
Why was his arm amputated?
He got into a little bit of an accident in Oklahoma. He wanted to be a farmer and with no experience, and it's one of those things that turn up the the vegetables. And he bought one used on like Facebook Marketplace, and he was trying to start it up, and he was just being careless, and boom, his arm comes in there, rips the sucker right off. But he's doing okay.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if you pitch that to like HBO and you're like, this is the inciting incident of this new TV, they'd be like, that never happens. That's ridiculous.
No, he's doing okay.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and he loves poking jokes at it. So he's like one arm Zeke, we call him.
Hell yeah. I mean, it's like you said earlier about comedy. Or comedy as a pill is my favorite thing ever. It's like there are a lot of hard truths and pains to accept in this life.
Right.
Delivering them in a funny way is a great way to like kind of ease off that Band-Aid.
Absolutely. I mean, he was obviously traumatized in the beginning of it, but he recovered pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He's like, this is my life now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's doing great, though.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
We
So
love you, Zeke.
We love you, Zeke. One arm
Yeah.
Zeke. You don't want to say one
I'm
arm
not
Zeke?
going to say it. You can say
I'll
it.
say it.
I haven't met him.
He's cool. And he's comfortable with it. I'm not saying you should say that to everybody who has one arm. That would be insane.
It would be a choice.
It would be, yeah.
A very strong
It would
choice.
be a strong choice.
Which is Hollywood, baby. That was for you, Zeke.
Okay. We had Marg on the show.
I love Marg.
Yeah.
My favorite part too is I get so energetic around Marg, and I'm like, because our characters, she's like the veteran CSI, and in season 2, like they started pairing up my character Penny and her character a lot as kind of like a mentorship thing.
Yeah.
And so we got to spending like a lot of time together on set, and became buddies. And I love Marg, but I'm a little bit more energetic than she is at times, and so I'd see her on set, I'd be like, oh, I love you, Marg, and every time she goes. And I just like, it's always the like, and then the like, and then, she's such a sweetie pie.
She is. I shot a pilot with her in Mexico, and a little backstory on the first time we met. It was really funny. We had rented out, or not rented, but the show had basically rented this entire 5-star resort to ourselves. I wasn't aware of that, so I'm in the workout room working out, right, and she's in there, and I don't know how we got talking, but I was just like, so, like, are you here on vacation or what's going on? And she's like, no, I'm shooting the show. And I'm like, oh, I'm shooting the show. I'm one of the actors. What's your name? She's like, Marg with a G, not Marge, Marg. And I'm like, Marg, I'm Wesam. What character do you play? And like, it's like the most.
She's like number 1 on the call sheet.
Right. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Cool. Can't wait to see you on set. And then I do this thing where I don't want to look up anybody before I go on set, because I don't like to feel like, oh, this person's done this or whatever like that. Yeah. And so I was joking one day on set, like, it was a really simple scene. It was like literally one of those scenes where you're like, that's it. And I just go, I think that's our Emmy clip. I think we're going to get an Emmy for this one. Yeah. And then she's like, oh, I already have one. And I'm like, ha. And she's like, I'm like, oh, you already have an Emmy, for real? And she's like, yes. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And just imagining her having to go to this kid, like this younger actor going, I have an Emmy. It's just a crazy moment. She's a sweetheart. She was on the show. And yeah, she's just a blast to be around. Very talented actress as well.
100%. But I think like that story is also so indicative of like Marg, and that like she has absolutely no ego. Like, no, it's none. Like, yeah, it's, and she doesn't care. Like, if you haven't, like, I'm the world's worst film student and actor. I have like seen nothing. And, so like, there'd be times when like other people would be like, oh my gosh, Marg, I love you in this movie. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I've never heard of that movie. But I'd never seen CSI before I booked it. Wow. Yeah. I saw some, like, a little bit of CSI Miami. Okay. So I was like, oh, it's like, CSI Miami is very like kitschy. Like, he was, really hamming it up. And so I was like, interesting. And then when I got the self-tape audition during the pandemic, it was originally for like a very small role. Like, I don't think it was supposed to be built out that much. And it was for like 25-year-old. And I play like 15 to 22 still. I'm 28 years old, but I'll work forever apparently. So anyway, so I was just like, there's no way I'm going to get this. I've never played anything like nearly as old as 25. So I started like improvising in the audition. I was just throwing lines left and right. And then I booked it and I was like, that's crazy. I should probably watch the show. And because like CSI Vegas was supposed to be like back to the beginning, like back to where it all started. CSI took place in Vegas. So CSI Vegas is like the new team, but some of the, the old the veterans come to like help out on a case where one of their guys has been implicated. And I'm like, I don't have no idea who these people are. So I watched it and I started watching it. I'm like, this is really good. I watched all 16 seasons in 2 months.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a binge.
I was also working full-time at a public policy independent nonprofit think tank at the time, but I was like, nights are for CSI. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then like Quentin Tarantino directed an episode.
What?
And like, yeah. Like,
how was that? Wait, what?
Yeah, like, do you remember, did you ever see CSI?
No. I've seen clips.
Okay, there's this one episode, and like, I want to say like, I don't know, season 3 or, it was like, it was like a groundbreaking show. It like changed the face of TV. I didn't understand this because I was born in 1996. I was 4 when it came out. Wow. So anyway, so I'm sitting there, there's this one episode where one of the CSIs, he's kidnapped but crazy, and he's buried alive. And there's a camera into the little buried alive place, and he's given a gun. And then like bugs come in. It's a whole thing. He's been like tortured, buried alive, and pretty much like there comes a point at the end of the episode where you're really questioning if he's going to kill himself or not, because he's just been absolutely, losing hope of being found, and the CSIs are racing to try and find him. Quentin Tarantino directed that episode.
Wow.
television.
Did you get to work with him? Like, I'm assuming for the episode, right?
No. One time. No. That was the original.
That's the original. I'm
The
so sorry. I
original.
misunderstood.
No, you're
I
okay.
misunderstood.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino was like, I'm going to make 7 movies total and another episode of CSI. Can you imagine?
Also, I believe that. That's not out of the box. If I read that on Deadline, I'd be like, yeah.
Have you ever heard him speak, though?
Yeah.
His voice is... Never mind, I don't want to be this person. Kindness. I live by kindness. Kindness is a value that I live by. He, like, guest starred on, like, the Jennifer Garner show, like, Alias, in the early 2000s or whatever.
Yeah.
About, like, a grad student who, like, is also in the CIA. It's a whole thing. Anyway, he guest starred, and I was like, that's like a wild choice for an actor. He's making weird choices. It's Quentin Tarantino.
Bold choices.
It makes sense.
I tell my students that. Make bold choices.
You got to.
Yeah.
I think
I could pull you back, but to push you forward is hard.
That's what, I've been thinking about this a lot because I think, like, I started in theater when I was, like, 11 or 12. I think theater made me brave. I think over time, Hollywood has made me scared. So I just signed up for, like, stand-up classes because I'm like, I want to get, like, start being zesty again.
I love it. Who are some of your favorite stand-up?
I don't watch stand-up.
Sarah.
I saw John Mulaney once. It was good a few years ago before the relationship drama.
If you do an open mic night, could you let us know?
Yeah.
I would love to come.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I won't heckle or anything like that.
Okay.
Because that would be so.
I have to do it. I have to do a showcase in like 6 weeks. I could invite you to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, speaking of invites, in the text message chain between us, you said, by the way, I am having a PowerPoint party tonight and you are invited. Obviously, I thought that was a misspelling or some weird autocorrect. You were serious.
Yeah.
You invite people over
Yep.
to give 7-minute PowerPoint presentations on whatever topic they like.
Yeah.
No limits.
Yeah.
Okay, I have questions.
I'm ready.
What's the craziest PowerPoint someone's ever done?
Oh. Well, define crazy, right? Like, there's a myriad of different topics that get addressed.
First one that pops into your head that was like, wow, that was not expecting that.
Okay, this was based off a prompt. So I provide a few prompts every invitation in case people want some direction.
Yeah.
You can do anything. You can freestyle it. But this one, I provided the prompt. So I wasn't expecting anyone to actually do it, but my friend Kendra did it and killed it. It was making a list of your favorite, like, marketing mascots. Like, you know, the goldfish fish or different, like, product mascots, and then rate them on their fuckability. And she did it, and it was so good.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
But, like, I've also, like, I tend to do, okay, so today's one, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the movie Taken. Yeah, that's right. The 2008 action thriller crime movie with Liam Neeson.
Love it.
It's amazing. I really think they fell into a trap when they made Taken 2 and Taken 3. For those of you who are watching who don't know this movie, it's a good movie. It's a really good movie. The first one, really good movie. And so pretty much, like, you know, there's this ex-CIA agent. He's divorced, kind of like estranged wife, blah, blah, blah. His daughter nobody seems to be, like, worried about 2 16-year-olds going to Paris for the first time for a U2 concert, potentially the most unbelievable part of the entire script. U2. Anyway, so then they get kidnapped, right, obviously, and taken, and then, like, oh my gosh, in the best movie scene ever, she's on the phone with her dad when the people come into the apartment to take her, so she sees her friend being taken, and she's like, oh my gosh, they're here, they just took Amanda, and then he's like, there's this amazing line where Liam Neeson is, like, sitting there, like, on speaker in his little dinky apartment talking to his daughter, and he goes, you're going to be taken. And it's, like, crazy. They never say the word kidnapping once in the entire movie. It makes no sense. Anyway, she's like, it's a kidnapping, but, like, taken. Anyway, so he's with her, talking her through the fact that she's about to be kidnapped. And then the person who kidnaps her, like, finds the phone, and he, like, gives this monologue into the phone of, like, I don't have money for a ransom, but if you let my daughter go, I will not pursue you. But, like, I have a very particular set of skills It's also a line they use in every single like blurb, like very particular set of skills. Anyway, and he's like, and if you do take my daughter, I will find you, I will look for you, and I'll kill you. And then the guy's like, good luck. And so then the movie is about him going to Paris and just like taking some fucking names and finding his daughter, who's like obviously been sold into sex trafficking or like is in the process of that. There's gonna have to be a big content warning for this episode. Anyway,
Yeah, we are demonetized 100%.
Okay, 666.
Yeah.
So anyway, but the vibes are here.
666.
Anyway, 666, not the devil's number.
Oh, I thought you just. Sorry. Holy shit.
We're tossing subliminal messages in there.
Sarah,
No,
I
like,
was like.
no, like,
Dude, that was.
like cool. 666.
Well, I'll let you continue after this. We are over on our time on Adobe Radio. What a crazy episode, guys. Am I right? Follow Sarah Gilman at Sarah Gilman 18. The show continues on. If you want to continue listening, watch us on YouTube tomorrow, or you can download Apple Podcasts and Spotify to listen. Thanks for tuning in live, and the show continues on. So,
Okay, so that's the first movie, and it's great.
666.
666. But back to Taken. So that's the first movie, and it's so good. But then Taken 2, they were like, okay, it's 2 years later. They're on a family vacation to Istanbul. And then they happen to run into one of the fathers of a guy that Liam Neeson had killed when he was tracking his daughter down. And the guy doesn't seem to be too worried about the fact that his son was involved in a sex trafficking ring. He's just more mad that Liam Neeson killed him. So then he's like, I'm going to take revenge. And then the third movie is like, he's like making up with his ex-wife and everything's perfect. And then she's brutally murdered. And he's framed for it. So there's like the CIA and the FBI are coming after him. It's unclear why they care about her murder that much. But anyway, and then so he has to find the true killers and protect the only thing he has left, which is his daughter, who nobody talks about, but she's awfully bratty. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing my PowerPoint on today. But I've also done them on like the theory of like multiple intelligences and like memory.
I actually like this a lot.
It's very fun. And so the first hour is for like snacks and socializing, and then we do like PowerPoints, and everything's like 3 to 7 minutes.
Great.
Yep, you present it, and then I make like a silly little program with like fake bios in it, and then afterwards we usually go to a dive bar and do karaoke.
This is actually a really good YouTube channel that you could probably do.
If you want to help me produce it, I'm down.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's do it.
I do it monthly. Like, this is the 13th of these things.
I think we should do this. I'm being dead serious.
Yeah.
What could we call it? Peyton? PowerPoint?
Well,
I'm
okay,
not
so
good at this.
PowerPoint Live.
so I have to
But
I
not that.
new choice. I have to be honest, I'm a little mad at PowerPoint right now because
Oh,
you need to have a subscription now to use like the Microsoft Office.
for real?
Yeah, and I don't want to pay a subscription fee, so I've been using Keynote.
Yeah.
Some people use Canva, other people use Google Slides.
Keynote.
Yeah, Keynote's good.
Microsoft, you're too greedy, man.
Yeah.
That's it. I like this idea though a lot.
Yeah.
I really, really do. It's very unique, and the 3 to 7 minute range is perfect.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming people get creative with the slides and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's transitions.
People like it's either like super lo-fi or yes. But like I think one of my favorites was like my friend was giving these ads for like an AI dating site. These exist now. It's not like AI exists on Bumble. It's like a site specifically where you're like matched with a like large like model language large model language? Anyway, like a ChatGPT type of thing, but it's like a pretending to be a girl that's chatting with you over this dating app. And so he like had an entire conversation with her on like the free trial, and then like put the transcript on the presentation and then walked us through like an AI dating app. One of the funniest things I've ever experienced in my life. Like watching the bot try to like remember what was true or what was not true and like get him to like her was insane. She was like, yeah, my dad died last year. And then later she was like, my dad just took me to the movies yesterday. And he's like, which one is what? I thought your dad was dead. And she was like, he's dead in my heart. And it was just like trying to like keep all the things true at once. It was crazy. He had to be there, I think, but it was good.
Even AI chicks lie. I just wanted to be stupid.
And Yeah, dating in LA is crazy.
It's easy. No, I'm kidding. No, it's not. It's yeah.
It's just the worst.
I've heard a lot of horror stories from female friends specifically, where I wanted to make a TV show where I'm a referee in a full referee outfit and a whistle, and I'm with these guys on their first dates.
Yeah.
And whenever they say the wrong thing, which will happen within the first 2 minutes,
Absolutely.
I blow my whistle.
Yep.
I go pause, and then she steps away, and then I go, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? Are you an idiot? Why the fuck would you say that
This
to
would
her?
be this could be our other YouTube channel.
Yeah, and then
that sounds great.
And I'd be like, "Don't say that."
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna take it 10 seconds back before that. Okay, you good? And then she comes back in, and they have to come up with something, and they get 3 whistles or they're out.
This sounds like an amazing thing.
Can you help me produce it?
Absolutely. You got the girl at the date. Let's do it right now.
All right. This actually sounds like a good idea. Okay. I think, you know what? I want to have you back on at some point. Maybe we can talk deeper into the mental health stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's going good now, though, for you?
Everything's good. I'm now like
right.
a board advisor for one of the organizations that like saved my life back in the day. So that's led a lot, like given me a lot of purpose and meaning. And yeah, I'm reading a bunch, hiking occasionally.
That's
Chilling.
awesome. That's great. And what's a couple good hotlines for people or places they can visit if they're looking for like suicide help or like kind of psychiatric help or therapist help? Do you have any recommendations?
100%. Thank you for asking that. A new development is 988. So it's if you're having a mental health crisis for you or yourself, or for yourself or someone you're worried about, you can call 988 from anywhere in the U.S. and it will direct you to like the closest call center, and someone there will be trained to help. They also have extensions for Spanish speakers, veterans specifically, and I think a few other languages, which I apologize, I don't know offhand. Trevor Project is a really, really good for LGBTQIA resources, and they also have a text and a chat feature, and they also have a feature from the chat where if you do like a quick shortcut, it completely erases the history from your browser if you're in a place that's not LGBTQIA friendly. So that can be helpful, especially if you're kind of in a hostile situation at home. And then the crisis text line is also very good for texting. They also have an online Instagram account, which is great. And then another one that I really love is called Teen Line, and that is a peer-to-peer crisis line for teens by teens. So each teen goes through extensive like 40 to 60 hours of training. They're supervised by like a psychologist in the room who's like helping support them. And they respond to emails, texts, and calls. So it's after school hours because they're in school, but it's for if you're like an adolescent and you want to talk to another adolescent instead of an adult, then that's a really great opportunity too.
Wow. That's something I would love to dive in deeper the next time you're in.
Yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
now I have so many more questions about that.
Hell yeah.
I'm really glad you reached out.
Me too.
And I'm hoping to make one of your PowerPoint parties soon.
100%.
And then we'll talk more about seriously producing this because I really love this idea. I feel like it's very unique. I don't know anything like it.
Do you remember like the website like Stumble Upon?
Yes.
I miss Stumble Upon so much, and I feel like this is like an in-person version of Stumble Upon. Yes. Because people just take you on the weirdest deep dives.
Yeah.
Like someone did one on like Celino and Barnes, the like personal injury lawyers who then had a falling out and separated. So there's now like Celino and there's Barnes, but there's not Celino and Barnes anymore. You know, it's like everybody remembers the jingle. Celino and Barnes. Wait, what is it? Injury? Something. 1-888 9888. You remember the jingle? It's the words that are hard. All right. Everyone's a critic. That's showbiz, baby.
All right. Thank you again for coming on, and we'll make those resources available in the description and in bio. I think that'll be great. We'll have you back on. Thanks again for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
All right, play us out, Peyton. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Remember to hit the bell icon, subscribe, comment below, and if you're looking for any of those help, it's in the description below. So please use those resources. Follow at Sarah Gilman. Follow Sarah Gilman at Sarah Gilman 18. Hello, Wesam, and always remember to listen, think, and then talk. Bye.